Hello everybody, and welcome to the second session of Business Research Method course, which is going to be about an overview of business research process, in which we are going to discuss the process of research and how we are going to prepare research. So the intended learning outcomes, or the ILOs for this session, is that after studying this chapter of this session, the student should be able to identify the role of business research in making decisions, discuss the research process, identify business research process stages, which is very important, so how the researchers and how students can do research, and also define ethics and explain how it applies to research or to business research. We are going to deal with many issues and many topics for this session. The first one is going to be an introduction about the research process and about the decision making and its relationship with the business research. Also the research process and the business research process stages. And at the end, we are going to talk about the ethics in business research. Okay, so as we said, in business research we are going to also take some experience in making decision, and as we have defined the business research, that it is collecting data, then analyze this data, then come up with a solution of the problem, and it can help or involves the decision making process. So any researcher contribution to the decision making can be summarized in the following. It is helping to better define the current situation. As we said, in the research we are solving problems and making decisions, so it helps to better define the current situation, and this is sometimes of this research can do so. Defining the firm, determining how consumer, competitors, employee view the firm. So it is like describing and defining the firm or the company, and determining what is the product and services, how the consumers can be determined, and the competitors, and studying the competitive advantage, and how the company can survive in the market, and also employee view, how employees, which is the internal customers, view their company or their organization. It provides ideas for enhancing the current business practices. It is like analyzing the situation and the environment, and also enhancing the current business practices done. Identifying the new strategic directions. So also it can help in strategize for the organization and for the company. Testing ideas that will assist in implementing business strategies for the firm. This is also very, very important. Examining how correct a certain business theory is in a given situation. So we have different models of business, have different theories. So we need to examine how the correct theory or certain business theory is fitting the situation or not. So the researchers can contribute too much to the decision making. That's why we relate the decision making with the research. So what is decision making? To do business research, we need to understand the process of decision making. It is a little bit similar or to each other. So the decision making is the process of developing and deciding among alternative ways of resolving a problem, or choosing for among alternative opportunities. If I compare this definition with the business research definition, it can be similar. So I develop and decide among many alternative ways of resolving problem, or choosing from among alternative opportunities. When I do research, I collect data, analyze them, and then come up with some findings, and these findings are going to solve the problem. So it is the same. What is if I ask the researcher's role in the decision making process? It is very important to understand this type of role, because the researcher is also a helper in decision making. So the first rule of the researcher is to recognize the nature of the problem or opportunity. So understand, define, identify the nature of the problem or the opportunity for the organization. The second one is identifying how much information is currently available and how reliable it is. So these are also two things. So I identify how much the information is available and whether it is reliable or not, and to what extent it is reliable. Determining what information needed to better deal with the situation. That means we will have some alternatives, and which one of these alternatives is going to fit this situation. There are some conditions that can affect the decision making, and this conditions is related to also business research. A situation in which there is certainty. This is the first one. So it's a situation in which the decision maker or the researcher certain about a certain problem, or know or identify a certain problem, and he's very sure that the problem exists. The second one is uncertainty. The uncertainty condition is a condition in which the decision maker or also the researcher is know about the problem, but he is not fully sure or certain about the environment or about the description of the problem. The third one is ambiguity, and it is the condition in which the decision maker or the researcher doesn't know or are not sure whether there is a problem or not. If we compare these conditions, three conditions, with the classification of research dependent on the objectives, which is three types of research, that's causal or relational, descriptive, and exploratory. For every condition we might use a type of research. So exploratory research is going to be for ambiguity, and descriptive for uncertainty, and causal or relational for the certainty. So uncertainty influences the type of research, of course, and this is what I have just explained. So if the situation is ambiguous, I will go for the exploratory research. That means I'm going to do research in order to find out whether there is a problem or not, and to what extent this problem exists. If I am completely certain, so I am going to do different types of research, which is causal or descriptive. The research process the research process, which is the main issue we need to discuss today. It is embodies a series, or it embodies a series of actions that are systematic, organized into steps. This is what the process means. So a systematic stages, or a systematic steps by which we follow in order to do research. So it is the main purpose of it is to provide directions for the researcher. It involves identifying, or the identification, the location, or locating, assessing, analyzing, and then developing and expressing the idea. So that means talking about the process of research from the beginning till the end. So I identify the problem, locate it, assess the problem, then analyze or gather data, analyze, then develop and express ideas. During the research journey, there are two important decisions we take mostly as researchers. The first one is, what do you want to find out? We need to understand this first. So what are the research questions you want to find answers to? So what is the objective, firstly? The second one is how you go about finding their answers, which is the methodology. So answering the question what is the research problem, and answering the question how, which is what are the steps and the practical steps through which you must pass in your research journey in order to find out answers to your research question. So the what question is identifying the problem. The how question is talking about the research process steps you are going to follow in order to solve that problem. So the business research process stages will start, which we are going to discuss today, is research task is usually treated as a sequential process stages. That means a step after another, and these steps must be sequential. I cannot do one unless it is dependent on the previous one. These stages may differ in various situations, and the various approaches suggest somewhat different stages. The variation may be due to purposes and methods used by the researcher. So it can vary, but this variation is going to be due to the purpose, due to the methods used by the researcher, but it must be sequential, as we have just talked about. The completion of each stage before going to the next one is not required sometimes. So I might do two stages spontaneously and at the same time. If we look at this figure, we can find different stages for the process of research, starting from defining the research objective, which is the first step and very important step. Second is the research design, how you are going to design your research and what are the methodologies followed and what is the type of research you are going to do. Then the sampling procedures you are going to follow, how many people you are going to include as your research subjects, and from where you are going to get the the information. Then the data collection, which is very, very important. After the sampling, prepare the questionnaires or prepare the tool of data collection, and then go to the field and get the data, and then analyze the data after that. And at the end, we will come up with the conclusions and in terms of a report. So as we said, different steps. The first step is going to be defining the research objective. So if the researcher is going to identify the objective from the beginning, his research process is going to be easy, and the research journey is going to be very easy, and he can reach the destination he has identified. So the goals to be achieved by conducting the research must be identified from the beginning. It's just like the journey. If you are not going to identify a destination, you might not reach anywhere. So define the problem, starting with the objective, starting with the issue, and then find out what is the opportunity, or monitor an operation. What types of problem you are going or trying to solve in terms of in terms of the nature of the problem, that is going to be practical or theoretical. Discovery before the definition is also part of defining the problem. The problems means management problem. So we have different types of problems, as I introduced in the first session. So we have the management problem, the organizational problem, and this types of problem is called the issue. The issue. So what is the decision making or maker is facing in his organization? What are the problem he is facing? A high rate of turnover, a low job satisfaction, a low job performance. All these might be problems, might appear in the organization, and it needs some solution. So for the researcher to build a research problem, he will start identifying the issue, then find out what are the causes for this issue, and then he needs also to understand or to answer a question, which is this, we call it the so what question. So the so what question, that means what will happen if there is an issue in the organization? What will happen if the job performance is low? If the employee's performance is low, what will happen? So I need to prove that this issue will harm the company and harm the organization. Planning the research design is very important. So it's a master plan that specifies the methodology or the methods and the procedures for collecting, analyzing the needed information. So how I am going to do the research. So mostly in business research we follow the descriptive analytical methods, in which we can collect data, sometimes or most of the time quantitative data, and then analyze this data statistically and then come up with conclusions. The researcher must specify the source of information and researcher method or techniques to be followed in in the study. Selection of the research design, also we still continue in explaining this. The research design indicates the steps that will need to be taken and the sequence they will occur, which one before the other. Each design can rely on one or more data collection techniques. Critical consideration in determining methods or methodology is the selection of subjects. Now, another step or stage in the process of research is the sampling. As we know, we might have sometimes a big population, so we cannot collect data from a very big population because it will take much time, it will take much effort, much resources. So instead of gathering data from the whole population or the whole universe of the researcher, we are going to draw samples as dealing with the population is very difficult. If for example doing research about customer satisfaction in telecommunication companies in Yemen, that means my population is going to be everybody or every customer who is using the service of the telecommunication companies in Yemen. Talking about 4 companies, for every company we might have more than 2 million or 2.5 million people. So we are talking at least about 8 to 10 million customers for the telecommunication companies. So we cannot collect the data from all of these people. So we'll draw a sample as per or according to sampling methods. We will explain, which will be explained in the next sessions. We are going to draw a small sample, a small number, maybe 300 to 500 customers, and these customers, this number is going to be a representative for the whole population. So this is also one of the important stages in the research process. So it involves any procedure that draw conclusions based on measurements of a portion of the population. So who to sample? The target population, as I have just explained. What is the size? Should be the sample for a certain population. This is also going to be discussed in future sessions. How to select the sample units is also very important to be understood. The data collection is also very, very important. It's very important how you are going to collect the data. You are going to distribute the questionnaires yourself or do the interview yourself. This is sure for the interview you are going to do it yourself, but the questionnaire you prepare it. It is better to distribute the questionnaire, collect data yourself, and take it first hand, or you can get the help of other people, friends, or email, or use the technology to collect the data. So which methodology to choose and which methods to utilize. So talking about the methodology of data collection, first about the methodology and then the techniques of data collection. Processing and analyzing the data, this is also one of the steps of the research process. So we edit when we get the questionnaires or when we get the data. We first edit them, and here we check the data collected for omission, legibility, and consistency and classification. Then after that we code, especially for the quantitative types of data using SPSS or Amos or any statistical software. So you need to code because it is numerical. So rules of interpreting, categorizing, recording, transferring the data into these softwares, and then do the data analysis, which is analyzing the data following the techniques which is suitable for that objective or this objective. So the application of reasoning to understand the data that have been gathered. The last thing is drawing the conclusions and preparing reports. So effective communication of the research findings is summarizing this type of or this step in the research process. Steps in communicating the research findings: we interpret the research result, we describe the implication, we draw the appropriate conclusions for managerial decisions, we also report requirements. Conclusion in reporting requirements, the conclusion fulfill the deliverables promise in research proposal. Consider the varying abilities of people to understand the research results. A clearly written, understandable summary of the research findings is also part of this stage. Ethics is very, very important to be stick to or to follow. The ethics in business research defined as a code of conduct or norm of behavior while conducting research. So we have some ethical obligations the researcher must follow. The first one is the purpose of research is research. So we do research for the purpose of research and not to harm people, for the development of the people life, for adding something beneficial for the people and not to harm anybody. Objectivity, so researcher must be objective because bias is not ethical. Even if some conclusions will come from the findings which the researcher doesn't like, he has to just make it to be objective and not to be biased and support something on another. Uphold to the moral standards of the research. That means ethical things like avoid plagiarism and stealing the other's work. The copyright must be maintained. Whatever study, whatever work, whatever ideas you have taken from others, you need to mention and the citation and put it in the research. The mispresenting research, you represent the research ethically and represent it in an ethical way. Protect the rights to confidentiality of both subjects and clients, and this is very, very important. So when you collect data, mostly in quantitative research, when we distribute the questionnaire, we write an introduction or a letter to the subjects or to the participants, asking them or telling them that this is confidential, don't try to even write your name, and we use this data collected from you for the purpose of the research and development and not to harm anybody, and we will keep every data collected from you confidential, and we are not going to show anybody not related to the research. So this dissemination of faulty conclusions, whatever findings you got, you have to disseminate and publish them as they are, not to change. So dear students, we have learned during or throughout this session to evaluate the role of business, research in decision making, discussing the research process, and discussing the business research process stages, and also defining the ethics and explaining how it applies to the business research. The assignment number 2 for this session, which is going to be an assignment for this session, is going to be attached and going to be uploaded with this session. We come to the end of this session, which was about an overview about the business process. I hope everybody and all of you has understood and learned everything or all the information needed about the research process and how they can prepare the stage or through the stages prepare a research. And we will see you in the next session. Thank you very much for listening. Thank you.